Hi writers, welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about one of the most important decisions you'll make for your story, point of view or POV. The perspective you choose can completely change how your readers experience your story, and each one has its strengths and challenges. In this video, we'll cover 5 main types of POV, and by the end, you'll have a clearer sense of which POV may work best for your story and how to stay consistent with it. Let's start with first-person POV. You've probably seen this a lot in YA novels or literary fiction. In this POV, the narrator is a character in the story, and you're seeing the world through their eyes using I and me. For example, I walked down the dark alley, my heart pounding in my chest. The shadows seemed to shift, and every small noise sent my nerves into overdrive. I glanced over my shoulder, but no one was there, just the flicker of a broken street lamp. But then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. I quickened my pace, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. This is first person because the character is narrating the events directly from their own perspective, using I and my. The reader is inside the character's head and sees, hears, and feels everything as the character experiences it, making it very personal and intimate. First-person narration offers a unique intimacy, allowing readers to delve deeply into one character's mind, fostering a strong connection between the reader and the narrator. This perspective feels personal and immediate, almost as if the reader is right there with the character. First-person narration enables the development of a distinct character voice, where their quirks, thoughts, and feelings can vividly shine through, making readers feel as though they are walking in the character's shoes. But this approach has its drawbacks. The narrator's limited knowledge means that the story can only unfold through their experiences, potentially leaving out important events that the character did not witness. This requires creative solutions to convey missing information. Furthermore, the narrative is filtered through the character's biased perspective, necessitating that readers understand the narrator's view might be incomplete or skewed. Think about a book like The Hunger Games. Katniss Everdeen is our narrator, and we see everything through her eyes, her fears, her doubts, and her emotions. This creates a strong emotional connection, but we're also limited to what Katniss knows. We have no idea what's going on outside of her immediate surroundings, which builds suspense, but can also limit the scope. Next up is one of the less common options, second-person POV. This is where the narrator speaks directly to the reader as you. It's rare in fiction, but when it's done right, it can create a super immersive experience. Let's go ahead and keep using the same example as before. You walk down the dark alley, feeling the chill in the air bite at your skin. Your steps echo, but you can't help but notice the eerie silence around you. Then you hear it, footsteps behind you. Your heart races, but you tell yourself not to look back. But every nerve in your body is screaming that someone is there. You quicken your pace, hoping it's all in your head. This is second person because the narrator is speaking directly to the reader using you. The reader becomes the character, experiencing the story as if it's happening to them. It creates an immersive experience, but sometimes jarring, where the reader is directly addressed and placed into the situation. Second person narration offers a uniquely immersive experience, pulling the readers into the story by using you, which makes it feel as though they are part of the action, creating a really personal connection. This point of view is also excellent for crafting more experimental or unconventional narratives, making your story stand out due to its unusual nature. However, second-person narration has its drawbacks. It tends to have a niche appeal, as some readers might find it jarring or gimmicky feeling, uncomfortable with being told what they are doing. Additionally, maintaining this point of view for an entire novel can be challenging and may feel a little forced, which is why it is often reserved for short stories or specific scenes. Books like Bright Lights, Big City use the second person, and it's all about making the reader feel like they're the protagonist living in New York City. This POV works in small doses or specific genres, and it can be tricky to get right, but it's not impossible. If you feel second POV works best for your story, then don't be afraid to try it out. Now let's talk about third person limited, which is one of the most common POVs in fiction. This is where the narrator is outside of the story but focuses on one character's thoughts and experiences. You're still using he, she, or they, but the focus is tight on one character and one character only. For example, using the same story as before, she walked down the dark alley, her heart hammering in her chest. The shadows made her feel like she was being watched, but when she glanced over her shoulder, she saw nothing, only the dim glow of a street lamp flickering above. Her breath hitched when she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She quickened her pace, trying to convince herself that she was alone, even though dread crawled up her spine. This is third person limited because the narrator uses she and her, telling the story from an outside perspective, but the reader only knows the thoughts and feelings of this one character, her fear and her sense of dread. So the perspective is limited to what she perceives. The reader doesn't get insight into other characters or events outside of her awareness, very similar to first person. Third-person limited narration offers a great flexibility, allowing you to depict the events surrounding the character while also providing insight into their thoughts and feelings. This point of view strikes a balance between showcasing the world and delving into the character's mind. It enables you to explore your character's internal world, similar to first person, while also stepping back to describe elements the character might not have seen or been aware of. However, this perspective has its limitations. You are still confined to the viewpoint of one character at a time, so if you need to reveal events happening outside their awareness, you must either switch to another character's perspective, which has been done, or wait until your character discovers that information. Harry Potter is a classic example of third-person limited. Most of the series follows Harry's perspective, so we know what he's thinking and feeling, but the narrative voice still has the flexibility to describe events happening around him. This POV works really well for stories with strong central characters. Next up, we have third-person omniscient, where the narrator knows everything that's happening, including the thoughts and feelings of the other characters. It's like the narrator is watching everything from above and can dip into any character's mind whenever they choose. For example, she walked down the dark alley, her pulse quickening with every step. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. And when she glanced behind her, the shadows loomed larger than before. At the other end of the alley, hidden in the darkness, a man followed her, his steps slow and careful. He knew she was scared. He could see the way she kept looking over her shoulder. She was getting nervous, just the way he liked it. This is definitely third-person omniscient, because the narrator knows the thoughts, feelings, and actions of both the woman walking in fear and the man following her. The perspective shifts between the characters, giving the reader insight into what both characters are thinking and feeling, which creates a broader, more all-knowing view of the scene. Third-person omniscient narration provides full control over the story, allowing you to showcase any event, inner thought, or backstory, as the narrator knows everything. This freedom enables seamless movement between characters and scenes. Additionally, it allows you to reveal the thoughts of all your characters, which is particularly useful in stories with large casts or complex plots where multiple viewpoints are essential. But this approach can create emotional distance, as the all-knowing narrator might make it harder for readers to connect deeply with individual characters. Moreover, if not handled correctly, jumping between different characters' thoughts, known as head-hopping, can confuse readers, making smooth transitions between perspectives crucial. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings uses omniscient narration. The story is grand in scope, so omniscient POV helps manage the large cast of characters and their many intersecting storylines. We get glimpses into different characters' thoughts and feelings while also keeping the big picture in view. Now let's dive into deep POV, which is one of my personal favorites. This POV is often considered a more immersive form of third-person limited because it aims to remove the narrative distance between the reader and the character's inner world. The goal with deep POV is to make the reader feel like they are experiencing the story from within the character's mind, rather than observing from the outside. For example, the alley felt tighter, darker than before. She couldn't breathe. Her chest tightened with each step. Goodness, why did I take this shortcut? Her shoes tapped against the wet pavement, echoing louder than they should. Don't look back. Don't. But then, footsteps. They weren't hers. Someone was behind her. Her pulse shot through her neck, and she could feel sweat beating at her temples. Faster. Move faster. But the footsteps quickened too. This is deep POV because there's no narrative distance between the reader and the character's thoughts. The narration doesn't say she felt nervous or she thought. Instead, it directly conveys her physical sensations and inner thoughts as if the reader is experiencing them firsthand. This eliminates the filter of traditional third-person narrator and immerses the reader deeply in the character's internal experiences. Deep POV offers maximum immersion by eliminating the filter between the character's thoughts and the reader. Instead of writing "she felt nervous," you would describe the physical and emotional cues as if the reader is inside the character. Her heart pounded in her chest, her hands shook, and she struggled to find her breath. This point of view allows readers to experience raw, unfiltered emotions, making it perfect for intense emotional moments where you want readers to feel exactly what the character is going through. But deep POV is hard to master because it requires everything to be shown through the character's direct experiences, leaving no room for summarizing or telling the reader. This can be challenging to sustain for long periods of time, but again, it's not impossible. Like Third Person Limited, you are confined to one character's experiences at a time, which can be restrictive if your story requires multiple viewpoints. So if that's the case, this probably isn't for you. Susan Collins in The Hunger Games often uses a deep POV with Katniss, but it's written in first person. We get deeply into her mind and feel every moment of her fear, pain, and determination. You'll notice the intense sensory details and emotional responses in scenes, which makes the reader feel like they are living the moment alongside her. Choosing the right point of view POV for your story involves asking yourself a few key questions. First, consider whose story you are telling. If your narrative is deeply personal or revolves around a single character's journey, first person or third person limited might be the best fit. Next, think about how much you want the reader to know. If you want the reader to experience only what your protagonist knows, first person or deep POV are great options. But if you feel you need more flexibility to move between characters or show a broader world, third person omniscient might be your answer. Finally, consider the kind of emotional connection that you want to create. Deep POV and first person are excellent for building an emotional bond between the reader and the character. But third person omniscient can offer more distance. Experiment with different POVs to see which one feels the most natural for your story, and don't be afraid to mix and match within reason. The right POV can make your story stronger, more immersive, and emotionally impactful, which is what you want for your readers. POV is a powerful tool that can transform how your story is told and experienced by readers. Whether you choose first person for its intimacy, deep POV for emotional intensity, or third person for its grand scope, the key is to stay consistent and use it to serve your story. Take time to experiment and find the voice that brings your narrative and your story to life. I hope you learned a lot about POVs, and hopefully that'll help you choose which one's going to be the best for your story and what you're writing. My name is Mary, and you're watching The Manuscript Maven, and until next time, keep on writing.